John Bolton was a national security advisor to the Donald Trump government, and in his John Bolton book interview he reveals 4 controversies about President Donald Trump. This book is perhaps the most anticipated book of the year in the United States. Its publication was announced in January, and since then there are readers who have pre-ordered it and are waiting for its delivery on Amazon, Walmart, Barnes & Nobles and many more online and offline marketplaces. The memoir of John Bolton, former national security advisor to the Donald Trump government, promises to reveal relevant information that did not come to light during the impeachment process against the U.S. president. In a recent John Bolton interview, he said he has chosen philosophy and he's not after fame or money in this book. "Having watched Donald Trump for 17 months, I cannot in good conscience vote for him," said Mr. Bolton. Entitled "The Room Where It Happened," 577-page, it is slated to hit bookstores on June 23 if the White House fails to prevent its disclosure earlier. The Donald Trump administration sought an emergency restraining order Wednesday to stop publication of a revealing book written by John Bolton, a former national security advisor to the President of the United States. John Bolton book interview, he reveals 4 controversies about President Donald Trump. According to the Justice Department, the book contains classified information, and therefore this Wednesday he asked for an emergency order from a judge to prevent publication. The government sued Bolton on Tuesday for breach of contract, but did not request a restraining order or court order at the time. Experts suggested that such an order will be difficult to secure because the Supreme Court rejected a similar attempt by the Nixon administration to block publication of the Pentagon documents. Trump himself accused Bolton on television on Wednesday of breaking the law by publishing the book. Bolton, who worked at the White House from April 2018 to September 2019, denies that claim, despite which the Trump government has been able to postpone its publication until now. WAB News tells you some of the most controversial revelations of this book that have already been leaked in the American media. 1. Trump sought China's support to secure his re-election. According to Bolton's book, the U.S. president asked Chinese President Xi Jinping for help in winning the presidential re-election. President Donald Trump asked his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping during a 2019 summit meeting to help him improve his re-election chances by buying more American agricultural products, according to the new book by the former security advisor. Trump national John Bolton. Bolton said Trump's attempt to change the course of the June 2019 conversation toward the U.S. election was a surprising move, writing that it was one of several conversations that formed a pattern of fundamentally unacceptable behavior that eroded legitimacy of the presidency. Overall, Bolton wrote, because the staff had served him so poorly, Trump saw conspiracies under the rocks and remained surprisingly uninformed about how to run the White House, let alone the massive federal government. Bolton said that during his period in the White House, Trump used to have only 2 intelligence briefings a week, and that, in most of them, the president spoke much more than advisors, often on matters completely unrelated to the issues in question. Bolton's book provides the most vivid first-person account yet on how Trump behaves in office. Several former officials have written books, but they have been almost entirely flattering texts from the president. Other former officials have said they will reserve their accounts of the time they worked for Trump until he leaves office so he can speak more frankly. Trump received questions about the book on Wednesday on Fox News' Hannity. He turned to personal insults, describing Bolton as a finished guy. "I gave him a chance." Quote. He also criticized copies of the book being distributed. "He broke the law. Very easy. I mean, everything that can be breached," said Trump. "It is highly classified information and I did not have authorization." The book also includes embarrassing claims that Trump believed Finland to be part of Russia, did not know that Britain was a nuclear power, and described journalists as garbage who should be executed. Regarding the meeting with the Chinese president in Osaka, Japan, Bolton wrote that Trump told Xi that the Democrats were hostile to China, according to the 577-page book. The Associated Press obtained a copy prior to publication scheduled for next week. Then, surprisingly, he turned the tide of the conversation toward the upcoming U.S. presidential election, hinting at China's economic ability to affect ongoing campaigns, pleading with Xi to make sure he wins, Bolton wrote. He emphasized the importance of farmers and increased Chinese purchases of soybeans and wheat in the electoral result. Bolton wrote that he would print Trump's exact words, but the government's pre-publication process has decided otherwise. The book, titled The Room Where It Happened, a White House memoir, to be published Tuesday by Simon & Schuster, has been the subject of a long-running fight between Bolton and the White House. The Trump administration insists that the pre-publication process was not completed and filed a lawsuit against Bolton this week to try to delay publication of the book, claiming it contains confidential information. The White House's claim that much of the book was classified information appeared to be an implicit acknowledgement that many of Bolton's allegations were true to life, as inaccurate information could not be classified. United States Trade Representative Robert Lighthizer said Wednesday that he was present at a meeting between Trump and Xi at the G20 summit in Osaka, but that he did not hear Trump ask Xi to buy more agricultural products to ensure he won the elections. Lighthizer spoke during a Senate hearing on business matters and was asked about Bolton's version of events. "It is completely false. It never happened. I was there. I don't remember that having happened. I do not think that's true. I don't think it happened," said Lighthizer. "What if he remembered something as crazy as that? Of course, I would remember." Quote, "Trump often pleased Xi," Bolton wrote. During a Christmas dinner at the White House in 2018, Bolton said Trump asked why the United States was imposing sanctions on China for the treatment of Uyghurs. China suspects that the Uyghurs, who are predominantly Muslim and culturally and ethnically distinct from the majority of the population, have separatist tendencies. In recent years, the Asian nation has dramatically stepped up its campaign against them, detaining more than 1 million people in concentration camps and prisons, which China calls vocational training centers. At the opening dinner of the G20 summit in Osaka, with only interpreters present, Xi explained to Trump why he was building the concentration camps in Xinjiang, Bolton wrote. According to our interpreter, Trump said Xi should go ahead with the construction of the fields, which he thought was the right thing to do. Bolton's claim that Trump asked China to help with his re-election comes as the president's rhetoric around the Asian nation has grown harsher in response to the coronavirus pandemic. But it could undermine the president's re-election campaign, which in television commercials and public statements tries to portray Democratic presidential candidate Joe Biden as weak against China. According to Bolton, Trump asked Chinese President Xi Jinping for help in winning re-election. The message would have been transmitted on several occasions. At a dinner during a summit in 2019, Trump told Xi that China's increase in the purchase of agricultural products from American farmers would bolster its electoral prospects. Also in June 2019, during a bilateral meeting in the framework of the G20 summit in Japan, Trump spoke to Xi about the presidential elections in the United States, referring to China's economic capacity to affect the ongoing campaign, pleading with Xi to make sure he wins. Quote, he highlighted the importance of farmers and an increase in Chinese purchases of soy and wheat in the electoral result. I would publish the exact words of Trump, but the government's review process prior to publication has prevented me, Bolton comments in the book, quoted by The Washington Post. When Xi agreed to prioritize agricultural products during trade negotiations, Trump referred to him as the greatest leader in Chinese history. This Wednesday afternoon, the commercial representative of the United States, Robert Lighthizer, refuted Bolton's version of these events and affirmed that the request for help for re-election never happened. 2. Invading Venezuela would be cool. According to Bolton's account, one of the toughest officials against Nicolas Maduro, many of the rulers to whom Trump went in search of support or approval took advantage of the president trying to manipulate him by resorting to his own personal obsessions, Trump and Putin. Bolton claims that Putin tried to persuade Trump to support Maduro. An example cited in the book was a phone call in May 2019 in which Russian President Vladimir Putin compared Venezuelan opposition leader Juan Guaido to Hillary Clinton, the Democratic Party's presidential candidate in the 2016 presidential election. Bolton calls the move a brilliant display of Soviet-style propaganda, which was aimed at securing support for Maduro, the Venezuelan ally of the Kremlin. The result? According to Bolton, Putin's arguments largely persuaded Trump. The Trump administration, however, maintains firm support for Guaido as interim president and has been increasing sanctions against the Maduro government. At the same time, Bolton attributes to Trump a series of scandalous statements, such as, for example, that he would have said that invading Venezuela would be cool and that the South American country is really part of the United States. 3. Help the dictators. In the book, Bolton refers to several occasions in which, according to his version, Trump expressed his willingness to stop criminal investigations to, in effect, do personal favors for dictators that he likes. Trump and Erdogan. According to Bolton, Trump was doing personal favors for the president of Turkey, Recep Tayyip Erdogan. The former national security advisor refers as an example that in May 2018 the president of Turkey, Recep Tayyip Erdogan, gave Trump a document that advocated the innocence of a Turkish company that was being investigated by the Southern District Prosecutor's Office of New York for alleged violations of sanctions against Iran. Trump then told Erdogan that he would take care of things, explaining that the Southern District prosecutors were not his people, but Obama's, a problem that would be fixed when they were replaced by his people, writes Bolton, who claims that there seemed to be a pattern of obstructing justice that he could not accept, for which, he assures, he reported his concerns to the Attorney General, William Barr. 4. Obsession with re-election. Bolton assures that Trump had a single objective that stood out above all else: guarantee his stay in the White House for another 4 years. Bolton argues that Trump is obsessed with getting re-elected. I have a hard time identifying any significant Trump decisions during my term that were not motivated by re-election calculations, Bolton writes. An example of this was Trump's decision to speak publicly about his desire to remove Maduro from power during 2018, which, according to the book, was motivated by his desire to please Republican voters in Florida. However, Bolton describes a hesitant Trump when it comes to supporting Guaido, who declared himself interim president of Venezuela in January 2019 with the support of the United States. So, although the U.S. president approved Bolton's proposal that the U.S. he publicly recognized Guaido as the legitimate president of Venezuela, within just 30 hours after that decision, and Trump was considering backing down, he was concerned that Guaido seemed weak, as a child, compared to the rude Maduro. Because of the same electoral concern, Bolton describes Trump in 2018 screaming in a meeting with his top advisors, indicating that the wall on the border with Mexico had to be built and that illegal immigration had to be reduced. I was elected on this issue and now I will not be elected for that, Bolton quotes the president. But even if the government persuades a judge to issue the restraining order, it will not repair the damage already done. The Washington Post and New York Times have published excerpts from the book, The Room Where It Happened, a memory from the White House, which paint an unflattering image of Trump. Such excerpts have already rocked the White House, which issued a statement Wednesday condemning China's harsh treatment of its Uyghur Muslim minority after excerpts from Bolton's book said Trump privately expressed support for China's Uyghur policies. According to Bolton, it was one of the main political concessions Trump offered to Chinese President Xi Jinping in exchange for agricultural purchases aimed at underpinning the President of the United States' political base among farmers. The United States White House asked a judge to hold a hearing on his court on June 19. The request was denied and the book is scheduled to be released on June 23. The book is titled The Room in Which It Happened, and according to the Simon & Schuster House, which is the publisher, President Trump is portrayed with a person with only one interest: to be re-elected. I cannot recall a single decision by Trump during my term that was not to be re-elected, a real chaos. Bolton writes.